Probably haven't heard much about the Weimar Republic, and if you have, I'd be willing to bet it's mostly limited to the Great Depression. This is something of a shame, as the history of the Weimar Republic is fascinating and is worth careful consideration. After all, it is a hallmark period between the monarchy of the Hohenzollern and the rise of Hitler, so it is worth considering what exactly changed between these two periods. This video will compare some of the key aspects of the Weimar Republic and how they compared with the scene of modern American society, and some of the lessons that we may be able to learn by comparing the two societies. There's a lot of really good content out there that kind of discusses the comparison of Weimar Germany along with modern America and what that exactly looks like and why exactly we should be concerned about it. That's not something I'm going to dive into to the same extent here. I'm not going to be going in depth quite the same. I'm actually going to be talking more about public institutions and kind of the feel of being an American and how it could compare to being to Weimar Germany. So this is going to be a little bit more short form rather than something of a 30-40 minute longer video. There's two main things I want to talk about today. First is this loss of faith in the institution of government. That's something we really do see in American society right now, and that's something that really is comparable in Weimar Germany, and so I want to touch on that for a second. But I also want to touch on some of the nonpartisan institutions becoming partisan. The Supreme Court is probably the best example of this on the American side. We're seeing a lot of issues with the Supreme Court becoming partisan, which is a very dangerous and very slippery slope, and I have some examples about that I'm going to give. So, what the heck? Sorry, I have a legal obligation to do that because some of you guys cannot pay attention for more than 2 minutes. I've seen you in college classes. I know what you're capable of. I'm going to start off this section talking about Weimar Germany and some of the Weimar courts with a really wonderful quote. I will put up the source on after I finish reading it. Quote, "The new constitution left the German military, civil service, and judiciary relatively unchanged. Judges who had been appointed by the Kaiser kept their jobs, even though many of them opposed the idea of a republic and often placed the need for order and security above the law." The reason that I love this quote when analyzing the Weimar Republic is that it does a really good job of explaining how exactly the Weimar courts could be seen as polarized, while also not villainizing those who polarized. Something really important to remember about this is that this is history. These are human beings. They are human. It's really difficult to analyze something and try to expect perfection from it. That's just not realistic. We can't do that. But I love that quote because it says at the end, the need for order and security above the law. That's something that I think is fascinating when analyzing Weimar Germany, is that many of these courts put such a precedent and such significance onto security because they were so used to the order of the monarchy that when it came time to allow social reform and to actually allow for the Weimar Republic to blossom into this democracy, it often got checked in ways that I will explain in a minute. So, how is this new republic, with limited historical precedent, to overturn decades of authoritarian rule and government officials who swore oaths to the Kaiser? The answer is they didn't. They really couldn't. How was Germany supposed to do this? This kind of process takes decades to undo, and it was something that Germany just wasn't able to tackle in time. And to give something of an example as to how exactly a polarized court, one which is split between what it should be doing for the government it represents, in this case a republic, and for the government that it wants to represent, in this case a monarchy, look no further than the case of Bernhard Reiter in 1924. So Reiter was a locksmith from, I'm going to fuck this up and I'm very sorry, Wernigerode, and he was accused of subverting the German Republic by bombastically proclaiming anti-Semitic propaganda at a local meeting. Upon being taken to court, the exact opposite of justice took place, and we see this precedent of partisan courts taking over. Reiter was found guilty, technically, and he was guilty. Under German law, this meant either prison time or a fine of 1,500 marks. However, Reiter would get away with a measly 30-mark fine. It's about $5 in American currency. It's nothing. This is in it of itself enough. This is in it of itself really to show exactly some of the problems that Weimar Germany faced. But what really sells it is what the judge said after the verdict. He said, and I quote, "More and more, the German nation is coming to realize that Jewry bears the most serious guilt for our misfortune. The rise of our nation will be unthinkable if we do not break Jewry's might. The thoughts expounded by the defendants present no danger to public tranquility. No, even the best of our people share this point of view." unquote. That is a real quote from a judge in Weimar Germany who not only ignored the law, he ignored it because it pushed his own narrative forward. Additionally, the judge gave Ryder an extremely light fine because he agreed with the political sentiment, even if it broke the law. In addition, the local judge, Beiner, was a chairman of the local German National Party, something of a precursor to the NSDAP, the Nazi Party. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's similar in ideology, and later on in Weimar history, it would actually kind of come into one. This is what happens when judges are allowed to possess and blend their political opinions with the law that they seek to uphold. And this resonates really true with American audiences with the Supreme Court. Let me go ahead and clarify this by saying, I am not saying that the American Supreme Court is this partisan. Good luck having something like this happen in the modern American judicial system. What I will say, though, is that this does feel ominously similar for some Americans. This notion of voting to personal beliefs and ideologies rather than what the law states is something that does feel very similar to many Americans. Look at Roe v. Wade. Look at many of these similar situations where we see there's a lot of controversy surrounding Justice Alito and Thomas with some of their ethical questions, to put it mildly. And so this is scary for a lot of Americans, and it does resonate like this polarization of the court could be very similar. And if you'd like another example of Weimar German courts being questionable at best, look no further than the Beer Hall Putsch. This was the first example when Adolf Hitler and the NSDAP attempted to seize Munich to use it as a platform for launching their plan against the Weimar government. As we do know, this failed, and just like with Ryder, although Hitler was convicted of a crime, he got substantially less punishment than would have been expected. Hitler got away with a mere 5 years in a luxury prison where Hitler would write Mein Kampf and not even serve a full fifth of his time in prison. Thankfully for us, this is where the Hitler story ends, and nothing really came of this afterwards. Thank you. This concludes the bit. So this is all great, but what exactly does it matter? Thankfully, we are not where Weimar Germany was. Our courts are polarized, yes, but not to the same extent as they are in Weimar Germany. We don't have cases like this coming up and happening in the same way. The cases of Ryder and Hitler are where we could, in theory, end up, but we aren't there yet, and unless this course continues, speeds up, and doesn't change, we won't get there. But it is interesting to compare, and it is interesting to look at. Here's where it does get interesting, though. The similarities between the polarization of the fundamental societies of Weimar Germany and the modern US are worth analysis and are replicable in modern American society. Just like with the other section, I'm going to start this one off with a really good quote that I found. So, quote, "Social contradictions have never been sharper. The direst housing shortage, the impoverishment of an entire social strata through monetary devaluation, hate between races and nations, Germany's struggle for existence, social upheaval, tax pogroms, capitalist self-assertion, and the strivings of the lower classes not to lose what they have gained. And meanwhile, tremendous technological progress. These are the things that occupy the world, that fill the newspapers, that are the center of all discussions. Upon closer inspection, they are only transitory problems, merely affairs of tomorrow and the day after, inessential compared to the eternal questions on which the development of humanity and the happiness of the coming generations depend." Now, maybe I'm just reading the room wrong, but does dire housing shortage, impoverishment of the social strata, monetary devaluation, hate between races, and a struggle for existence sounds kind of familiar? Because if you're from America, it should sound probably moderately similar. And this can be a real issue. The primary issue with this is that a polarized society brings normal democratic processes to a gridlock. Two sides of different ideologies can no longer actually exist and form ideas with both sides' input. A society of pointing fingers and claiming enemy to your native countrymen for ideas is the quickest way to bring complete unrest to a society. From there, all issues build upon itself slowly. The opposite side becomes the enemy, politicians operate under party lines, and government institutions slowly lose value to the common citizens as we see in America today. Weimar Germany is an extreme case of this, and thankfully American society is an example, but not to the same extreme. You don't have to fry core for God's sake. However, we do possess an underlying society which is similar to that of Weimar Germany, and that itself is the cause for alarm in these circles. So to answer the question that continues to come up in these circles, are we Weimar Germany? Well, no, but do we have some of the underlying fundamentals which could lead to a Weimar Germany situation? Yes. Is this really something that we should be freaking out about? No. Is it something we should be paying attention to? Yes. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And so remembering some of the situations that happened before us and thinking about them in the modern context can greatly benefit us as we try to navigate the complex human existence.